Broadcasting from the Prairie Sportsman Studios. Presented by OnX.
Know where you stand with OnX.
We're not just a radio show anymore.
Heck yeah.
This is Sporting Journal Radio.
That's right. Welcome to the show. I'm Bret Amundson. Thank you for tuning in on this station right here by downloading the podcast at sportingjournalradio.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Or maybe you're watching this on YouTube. Thank you very much. That's Dan Amundson right over there. Dan, how you doing?
Hi. Good.
Are you ready for Kodiak?
I can't believe we're going. Well, we'll be there. Should be there by the time this airs.
Oh, man.
So you're watching us here, but we're there.
Yeah. So we pre-record this show, and we will be traveling to Alaska, Kodiak Island in Alaska, for an amazing trip of a lifetime. We're going to be hunting sea ducks up there, of course, and the other waterfowl, but also learning about the island, checking out the scenery, going in search of other wildlife, learning about the culture and the management of waterfowl. It's a little bit different management there than it is, say, in the Central or Mississippi flyways, and how ducks are managed and how they're researched. I mean, you're talking about chasing ducks around in the ocean. So we're going to be learning all about that for a film that we're going to put out next year for North American Waterfowl. So look for the North American Waterfowl Show on Instagram to follow us more, and also Facebook, so you can follow us more there. And we'll be talking about it more over the next couple of weeks here on this show right here. And we're going to talk waterfowl a lot this week with Art Diaz. Art Diaz Photos on Instagram, great waterfowl photographer, good dude, and also works for Alclair Audio, which is what you're seeing here, and which we use for custom hearing protection when we hunt as well too, custom molded hearing protection. Why should you care about that? Because it's your hearing, it's one of your senses, and every time you pull the trigger without hearing protection, you're going to lose a little bit of it, and you don't get it back. So we're going to talk about how important it is to protect your hearing while you're hunting, and we're going to get into waterfowl and taking pictures and how his season over in South Dakota, how the duck hunting and goose hunting was in South Dakota this fall. We'll also talk to Joe Henry as ice builds up north. How are lake conditions right now at Lake of the Woods? Are they ice fishing? What's it look like? Joe will tell us here in just a little bit. First though, Dan, who are the sponsors this week?
This week we have OnX. Know where you stand with OnX. Lake of the Woods Tourism. Lake of the Woods is the walleye capital. Plan a trip for this winter at lakeofthewoodsmn.com. I can't wait for our trip. Live Target. Match the hatch at livetargetlures.com. Haybell Heights Campground and Resort. Book a trip to Devil's Lake. Learn more at haybellheights.com. Alclair Audio. Save your hearing in the field with Alclair. Learn more at alclair.com. Ottertail Lakes Country. Find your inner otter this winter at ottertaillakescountry.com. And Prairie Sportsman, the new season starts in January. Catch episodes anytime, though, at the Prairie Sportsman YouTube channel, or check your TV guide for listings.
Ice fishing season is here. This winter, plan a trip to Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Not only will you have the chance to catch their legendary perch, but this year, Haybell Heights has been catching big walleye after big walleye. And they're doing it from a mobile, comfortable snow bear. No matter how cold it is outside, you're warm and toasty on the inside. Learn more and book a trip today at haybellheights.com. That's haybellheights.com.
852 million acres of public land, 147 million private properties,
all in the palm of your hand. The #1 hunting GPS app just got better. With hundreds of custom map layers, 3D and topographic maps, you can easily scout on the road or at home before you go. And now you can get important weather details, CWD detection, and even know what crops have been planted where. Get the most trusted hunting GPS app ever made. OnX. Know where you stand with OnX. All right, this is Sporting Journal Radio. Thanks for tuning in on the network by demand at sportingjournalradio.com. Wherever you get your podcasts, or maybe you're watching this on YouTube, thank you very much. That's Dan Amundson right over there, too. He's joining us. And if you've noticed, if you're watching this, underneath that like, subscribe, and share, when that gets done scrolling across, you'll see something new down in the corner down there, and that's Alclair Outdoors. And to tell us more about what Alclair is, Art Diaz is going to join us now on the show. Art, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
I'm doing well. I'm glad you're with us, and I'm excited to be working with you guys because hearing protection has been something I've been a proponent of my whole life. So I grew up with a dad and a brother that shot all the time, and I had two uncles that both had two sons, and the 9 or 10 of us with my grandpa, we would hunt all the time growing up. And I was about 8 years younger, 6 years younger, I guess, from the next oldest one. Most of them are all a good, 8 to 12, 13 years older than I am. And I noticed as we got older and older, their hearing got worse and worse and worse. And I was the beneficiary of that in the sense that they pushed wear hearing protection on me constantly. So while some of them, I think, Dan, your dad, my brother, he ended up getting some hearing aids pretty early in life because of shooting and
he's
growing
on
up.
set like number 3 now, I think, or something.
Is he really?
Well, he keeps running them through the wash, so it keeps wrecking them. But yeah, he's still got another pair, and he's 50. He just 55. I think he just turned the other day, and that's young to have hearing aids. But
Yeah. And he's had them for a while.
Yeah, ever since I've been alive, I think.
So I've been a big proponent, and I pushed Dan when he started hunting with us when he was young. I pushed him to get some hearing protection. So it's pretty important. And Art, you and I have both seen it. You'll be sharing a blind with somebody, and they won't be wearing earplugs or any sort of hearing protection. I'm like, I don't need that stuff. I like to hear, and which I think is funny because every time somebody tells me that, I say, well, if you like to hear, you'd wear hearing protection because you're going to lose it and you don't get that back, do you?
Right. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's one of those things that it's so gradual that people don't realize it until it's too late. It's not like, I feel like your vision, you would notice like, oh man, yeah, it's grainy, it's been blurry, it happened 2 days ago. You would really notice that. Where hearing, it's like, man, all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're 50 and people around you are like, you can't hear anything. You have the volume on 10 on the TV, in your radio, in conversations. So it totally is like that. Once you get it and it's good, keep it that way. I would recommend saving anything you have left. In any form or fashion of it, just please do something to take care of it, because once it's gone, it's not coming back, and then you'll live kind of the long life of hearing aid after hearing aid after hearing aid. And they're not inexpensive. They're kind of a pain in the butt. You just deal with them, and just kind of is what it is. But yeah, hopefully it's a new thing that we really consider as a viable part of our equipment list, just as important as a good set of waders or a shotgun or whatever. I think that hearing protection is now at a point where it's going to, enhance the hunt. It's going to make it better, and then also just protect you long term.
It's so important, and getting a high-end set of earplugs or custom hearing protection, they're not cheap. But when you think about it, it's one of your senses, and and maybe I've got guys that I hunt with that are younger than I am, and my hearing is better than theirs is, and maybe it's because, and I'm definitely losing some just because I'm getting older and do hunt a lot, but I try to wear hearing protection all the time. But maybe it's because I'm getting older and I'm starting to realize that, hey, I'm not as young as I once was. I want to hold on to everything that I can, try to keep my body in, I'm definitely abused my body. I'm not going to say I'm a picture of perfect health by any means, but I want to try to be as healthy as I possibly can and preserve my senses as best I can. And hearing is one of those things. It's a pretty valuable sense to have. Like, we all use it every day. And when something as simple as covering your ears when you fire a gun at something can help you prolong that hearing, just wear something. But having something custom that also will help you. I mean, I think that's the biggest problem with people is they realize that once they put earplugs in, if you're trying to communicate with someone in an A-frame or a duck blind, or if you're in layouts and there's a guy's, especially if it's a little bit windy and a guy 3 or 4 layouts down from you, you got to almost yell for them to hear you. And if they got earplugs in, there's no communication going on there. So having something that can amplify a little bit so you can communicate, but then block out those loud noises, I mean, that's just going to make your experience that much more enjoyable out there.
Yeah, and like you said, it's one of your senses. I remember before I even worked for the company, I was at a trade show working with a different company in the outdoor space, and my wife, when I got home, was like, "Hey, how did it go? What did you buy?" Because you always need one more thing when you're out there, And I was like, "Nothing really, like I have had new decoys that year. I've got a new shotgun. Everybody has a new super high performance waterfowl load, yada yada." And I was like, man, there was this hearing protection company that I wanted to try, but they're kind of expensive. And without missing a beat, she was like, yeah, but it's your hearing, like it's your senses. Like, how much would you pay for the eyesight, Yeah. And you're kind of like, a lot more than $1,000. I know that much, like, especially waterfowl hunting. There's so much gear that's involved with it. Just next time you pack for a trip, just think about the amount of bags and things you bring with you. And it's, I'd be the first guy to say like, oh yeah, new decoys came out. You sold your whole spread. You got new ones. You got a new trailer, a new Super Black Eagle came out. You had to buy that, all those kind of things. But at the time I was putting hearing protection on just the back burner, where it was kind of like, it'd be cool someday. But now that I'm married and have kids and stuff, it just kind of switched a little bit. I was like, man, maybe I've always worn like a foamy or like rolled something up and kind of done, made way to help it, but not like fully protected. And like you said, once you invest into a custom set, something that can amplify, something that is not a hindrance, because you're totally right. When you put those foamy plugs in, everything now kind of sounds like this, you lose all of it and you're constantly pulling it out because you couldn't hear what they're laughing at and all the camaraderie, all the stuff that's going on. For some folks, that's the only time they get to see their friends. If you're busy and you're working 50 hours a week and you got a wife and kids, like, the weekend might be the only time that you get to hang out with your buddies and you're catching up on life and stuff. So it's a huge part of waterfowl hunting with your friends, upland hunting, those kind of things where you talk a lot. But yeah, it's a game changer once you have that ability to still hear and you're not dinking with them all the time. You're not pulling them in and out and setting them down, and your hands aren't cold and they're not bloody or muddy and feathers all over the place. And it makes a world of difference.
When I had the habit of just wearing one in my left ear, as I would shoot, it'd be the left one that would be affected the most. And then, I'd put a foamy in or whatever in the left ear so then I could still hear in the right one. Well, every time I did that, I'm still doing damage to the right ear the whole time. So having one that I can put in both and then still be able to have a conversation is pretty important. And I want to talk about ducks and waterfowl photography and how your duck season was over there in South Dakota. But I want to just stay on hearing protection for just a little bit longer here, because I think it's a pretty important topic that everybody should pay attention to. And as I said it a couple of weeks ago, I think, and you and I have talked about it off the air. You still have guys out there that think that they're too tough for it. They don't need it, or earplugs are for wimps, or whatever. But again, it's pretty important to have. And when you talk about getting gear for waterfowl is not a cheap hobby. So when you look at your decoys and your trailer and your shotguns and like your Sitka gear or your high end clothing gear, you're spending a lot of money. And the more you do that, the more you realize how much you like having nice gear. When you spend money on it, you start to realize, gosh, this is kind of comfortable. This is kind of nice. I like having nice things, and hearing protection should be included in that conversation.
Yeah, I would say, I can't remember who said it, but it's crazy how comfortable you can be in uncomfortable situations. When late season when it gets cold up here and you're waiting for the birds to fly, and all those kind of things, like it gets frigid and people think you're crazy. You're like, you were sitting in the middle of a field for 8 hours waiting for this thing to happen, and you're like, yep, and I do it again tomorrow. But I always tell folks too, it's kind of like when rotomolded coolers, for example, I feel like Yeti was like just a huge like shift in that industry where people are like, are you crazy? $600 for a cooler? Are you out of your mind? For how long did people use, $20 Colemans basically to get by? And all of a sudden you have one and you're like, I can't imagine not, you know? And even now the conversation went from, are you crazy? That's so expensive, to now it's like, man, I've got a 75 quart in the back of my truck. I've got a 60 in the camper. I've got a 45 in my boat. I've got a 10 quart in the back of my cab of my truck. You got all the tumblers and accessories and all the things. And now I can't tell you how many friends have $2,000+ worth of tumblers and coolers and whatever. And that's just normal, you know. Rotomolded dog kennels, another big one. People are like, dude, $700 for a dog kennel? Are you kidding me? And now everybody I know has got 2 of them in the back of their truck. You know, and it is one of those things that once you have it, once you realize, like, man, if you did get in an accident and you lost your dog, would you be willing to pay $700 the next day if I could bring him back? I know every single one of my friends would say, I'll give you $700 before you finish with that sentence.
I'd pay double.
You know, easily. And the same thing with hearing. You know, I would love to have this conversation at 55, like Dan's dad was saying, and it's like, man, if I told him, hey, can you go back to being 21 and I'd give you your hearing back and it's only going to cost you $9.95, would you do it? People would be like, no brainer, I'd do it. And that's kind of the learning curve that I think we're on right now, as people are really starting to think like, hey, man, this is a viable, important part of what I'm going to be doing for a long time. And that's the other thing, is when you talk to folks who enjoy hunting, most of them don't think like, yeah, man, I don't know, I think I'm going to try this hunting thing out for the next 7 months. And if I don't like it, I'll probably quit. Pretty much anybody that I've come across says they've done it since they were kids. They're, you know, people in their family did it. It's a lifestyle. It's not something that, short of losing my limbs, I don't think I'd ever give it up for any reason. You know, it's like, I can't imagine ever being like, yeah, I'm going to sell my Diaz spread and get out of it. I don't want to shoot another greenhead. I'm done. You know, it's like, that thought has literally never crossed my mind. So I think it's important to invest in yourself in the future. Just like you said, you know, once you have a nice gun, it's hard to go back. Once you have nice clothing that keeps you warm and dry, it's hard to go back. And I think once you have a season under your belt with these things and you realize, like, man, that stuff is so harmful to your hearing, and the effects of just the quality of your life in your career, with your kids, you know, all your family, all that kind of stuff. And if you can't hear, that's a big part of your everyday that you can't get back, you know? Yeah.
And I'll tell you, like, so we're doing this Alaska trip, and we got some new Sitka gear to bring up there. And, you know, I've got some Sitka stuff already, and I had the layout suit, and it's pretty layout jacket, layout coat. It's pretty warm, but ended up getting the new Boreal jacket, and then did a little test hunting with it. We had a couple pretty cold days where we went out and did some goose hunting out here. And I was shocked. Like, I couldn't believe how well it stopped the wind and just how warm it was. And then, Dan, I think you'd ordered the neck gaiter, and I didn't order one originally, and then I looked at it and I was like, oh, I want one of those.
Yeah, for $40 to keep basically, if your neck gets cold, the rest of you is cold. Whew, it's the best thing I've ever owned.
And it's like wrapping your entire head in, like, the Primaloft or whatever. It's so warm and comfortable.
It's like
and
your bed sheets. Yeah, it's like you never got out of bed.
My face was sweating. Like, I had to take it off after a little while, but when we were in the blind, it was nice. I could take it off. But when we got out and that wind hit you, it was nice to have. So having the right gear just makes those experiences so much more enjoyable. And, you know, I'm wearing these two. All right, so these are the Studio 3 triple drivers, and we're talking, I got the EXP Pros, and that's what I'm using when I'm out there hunting. But now when we're in here recording, so maybe not every hunter is going to wear something like these, but these are more common with the other side of the Alclair business, and that's the musician side. You guys have been in the audio business for a long time.
Yeah, so Mark Musselman is the owner, him and his wife Amy. And they've been in the audio game with their family for a long, long, long time. He kind of is the one that's the child that said, man, hearing aids is good and that's got its place, but I want to make it fun. I want to spend time with these folks. And music has always kind of been a big passion of theirs. So we started making monitors. Man, I don't even know, probably at least 12 years ago, I would say, maybe even longer than that. They have a hearing aid practice as well that they were involved with in their family, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I would say a big part of our business is taking care of artists, people you see on TV every day, people you hear on the radio, wear our ears. So a huge part of our clientele base makes their living playing music and traveling and entertaining folks. And the outdoors is something that's super prevalent in that community as well. Even for Mark, his main passion is upland hunting, and same thing with me. When I came across the company as a customer, over a decade ago, I bought their monitors. I was traveling as a musician at the time and purchased them there, and we hit it off because we both like the outdoors, and that's a big part of our life. So this is just kind of an extension of that, something that really matters to us, and another way to help serve and take care of some folks.
And a Minnesota-based company.
Yes, sir. Yep. They've been in Minnesota since the beginning, and they are in Osseo. And we have a shop in Nashville, Tennessee as well to take care of our touring community of artists.
That's cool. Well, I'll tell you, and we get a lot of people that watch this that are content creators or videographers. They film things, and I'm excited to wear these if I'm filming a hunt somewhere. That I can not only have my hearing protection, but I can plug these right into my camera, and I can have hearing protection. Plus, I can monitor the audio going into my camera. So these might be a great option for those out there trying to film some hunts as well.
Yeah, especially with the isolating properties of it, especially if folks are wearing like this style of a headphone or whatever, it can be loud out there with wind and calling and all the things that you really want to like isolate, like how much volume are you taking into your camera, because once it's all shot and you get back and your audio is horrible. Yeah. I mean, that's not a good situation to be in, especially if you're away from home or on a hunt that's really special and that you can't replicate. I mean, that'll put you in a pickle quick. So a lot of folks have been really enjoying that use for, like you said.
So I've had different custom hearing protection. I've had a set of custom hearing protection in the past, and back then with this other company, we did our own molds. And I think me and Tony Crotty did it one night after there may have been a couple of Windsor 7s involved before we did it. I think we got it right, but it was definitely an experience, and we didn't know what we were doing. With you guys, you recommend either going into the shop there or going to see an audiologist to get your molds made. Yeah.
We were very intentional about that. And as much as I wish there was a way that I could send, kits to people and do it at home, just because of the, increase in sales that you would get, is something that we weren't really willing to lose the quality of a seal. The whole thing, about this is that it's a custom-made product. It's supposed to fit you perfectly. With the two-part kind of gummy stuff that you just kind of bubble gum shove in your ear, it gets a little bit, but once you see our molds and how it goes all the way, into your ear canal and right to that first bend, it's something that I wouldn't just recommend anybody to like, hey man, try this. And I jokingly tell folks, I'm like, have you ever tried to back up a trailer with your wife? It's the hardest thing in the world. It makes you want to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge twice, and it's like, man, I couldn't imagine just like, here, just shove it all the way into my ear canal, like try to get it close to the eardrum and hope for the best, Yeah. I would hate for someone to experience some sort of damage to their eardrum or something like that. So we're very adamant about it. It's super easy. It feels like you're setting up an appointment with like a doctor and it's going to be kind of a big deal. It's not. It takes you 5 minutes to get your impressions made. It's super quick and easy and safe. It just takes someone who's done it before and is a trained professional or someone who can do the job well. And you send them to us, and we 3D scan them from there and make them just for you.
Yeah, and you've got different events out and about where you'll do molds for people too if they come up and see you, if you're set up for doing that, right?
Oh yeah, yep. At every trade show, we always have at least one designated person taking molds, and at a lot of them, people will just start to line up just to get their impressions taken, and we do them free of charge at the show. Also, I travel a lot to different outfitters and visit clients and guides and all that stuff. So once I'm on the road, I'll stop all over the place and take some impressions of folks too. I can't tell you how many I've done out of the back of my truck bed.
Well, and then otherwise, like Dan was just going to go up to a local ear doctor here in town and get them made, and they're pretty cheap too, I think, to get done.
$25.
Yeah.
Easy peasy, in there for 20 minutes.
Yeah. My big thing I tell folks is just go to Google, type in audiologist or hearing aid center close to you. Call them, let them know that it's not for hearing aids. It's not an insurance thing. You're just looking at getting custom made earplugs from a company. And it should be pretty inexpensive from there.
Well, getting back to cameras a little bit, you're a guy that spends some time out there taking pictures and taking stills. We should talk a little bit about waterfowl photography, and just duck hunting in general. You're over there in South Dakota. How was your season this year?
Oh man, it was dry. We started off looking pretty rough. It was. I had this weird mixed split. I was excited for the new opportunities that it would present itself. I was bummed because every single one of my favorite holes was dry. And I'm talking about cracks from your road, dry. So we had to shift gears. Luckily, one of the guys I hunt with, he loves to hunt out of his boat, and that's kind of how he grew up hunting and what he prefers. So we just went to bigger bodies of water and trafficked birds. And I mean, we had an awesome, I can't complain. We shot them for a lot of days in a row. And I can only recall one bad hunt, which was ironically next to the best hunt. We had one day where I love the part of the year where you can almost actively see the migration start. You get a huge push of birds, and you're for a fact that those were not there yesterday or in that area, the last few days or whatever. And it was exactly like that. We had one of those mornings that it was just lights out, everything was finishing perfect. It was the first time that I felt like we had a ton of time to take photos and to do all the things we wanted to, and it just ended too quickly. But then the immediate next day was a ghost town. So that was my only hunt this year that I felt man, that was rough. We got our butts whooped that day. But other than that, it was fun. We had a really cool early season. We hit that same kind of October lull where things haven't really pushed in, and the ones that have been around have gotten beat up a little bit. So we took a little break there, and I was busy with work anyway, so I missed a few days doing that. And then once November hit, things were back and cooking, and it's been great. We shot a bunch of snow geese this year that we usually don't target them too much, but they were around, and
that's
got a couple
awesome.
of good hunts. Got some good spec hunts in this year, and of course always after the mallard. So it was fun. I really enjoyed it.
It's funny that you say that, and now I'm real jealous. I was trying to get you over here for a hunt, and we just couldn't make it work. But it sounds like I should have come over there for a hunt, because it sounds like you had better hunting than we did. We were so dry over here, and we didn't get our push. It's funny that you talk about the October lull and the November push, because that's what I talk about. That's what I experience here too. And granted, we're not too far away from each other in the grand scheme of things. We're pretty close to South Dakota over here. But I've been I don't want to say I've been arguing with them, but there's a couple of people, and every year this comes up right around this time, because somebody posted on Facebook, it's the end of the duck season in Minnesota. Where's all these pile pictures? You guys always talk about it being so good right now. And it just a deluge of pile pics came into this Facebook post, this Facebook group post, because everybody smashed this last week. We got a pile of mallards around. We got the most geese around that we've had all season now. And literally the last day of the duck season was the best mallard hunt that I heard about in my area. And we had some good mallard hunts for probably a week or two before that around here. But really, it wasn't until this last 2 weeks of the season that we really had a good concentration of mallards to chase around here. And there's some guys that are just, the best hunting's in mid-October, and I don't know why you guys want to push the season later and go later. I like shooting teal. And I'm like, you know what, man? I like shooting teal too, but when it's 90 degrees and I'm trudging through the mud, I'm not enjoying it. Not as much as I am when I'm laying in a cut cornfield in mid to late November and there's 500 mallards spinning my decoys. To me, that's just more fun. But you can't. I've learned one thing: is you can't please everybody in the waterfowl world.
Yeah, it's funny how much tactics changed. Obviously throughout the country too. You see folks and people are over there tearing them apart on the internet of man, what a dummy! I would never set my blah 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 this way. I would never hunt out of a whatever blind or this in the field or that and the other thing. And it's funny. There's been times where I've gone to different places and in my head I'm like, dude, this would never in a million years work where I'm from. I can't believe we're actually doing it this morning. And all these people here paid money to be here today. This is, I can't wait to see what this feels like at 10:30 in the morning. And, here comes the sun, and there's a pile of birds and you're shooting them and everything's going great. But, a big thing for me is I always love the interactiveness of hunting mallards is kind of what I really love. And it feels like there's just something about those November ones that, when you hit them and it's nice and sunny and there's a little wind and you about break their necks, when they turn on you, there's just nothing better for that. And like you said, I love shooting teal. I love eating them. I love all that stuff. And it's fun, but there's just not the interactiveness with the bird that I feel like you get with a November mallard, or even just hunting this time of year.
I think a lot of it is the size of those groups too. I really got into snow goose hunting in the last 10 years. Well, probably about 10 years ago, and then spent I don't know, 5 or 6 years trying to chase them pretty hard. And what I always liked about them was just you couldn't see anything like it in any other scenario in the waterfowl world, right? Like you might get a flock of 5,000 snows spinning above you, and the noise is so deafening. Doesn't matter if you're calling at them or if you got an e-collar going, they're not going to hear it anyway. And if it's adults, they're also the worst because they probably won't decoy. They might put on a little show and spin at like 80 yards and then bust out and say, yeah, I've seen this game before. But once you get that big group of juvies to do it, there's just nothing like it. And the closest to that is maybe lesser Canadas working like snows. And then even to a lesser extent, big groups of mallards that'll spin around you in a cornfield. And you just don't like, Seeing a ball of teal coming in at 100 miles an hour is fun, and if you're lucky, you can get your gun shouldered before they zip out of the decoys again, or they'll just land and swim into the decoys and act like they just have no care in the world. But seeing a big flock of mallards or snows or little Canadas or something, that just really gets my heart pumping.
Yeah, and I would agree. Like, I've really tried to, in the last handful of years, really change my perspective into that same thing. Like, I used to always feel when I was younger like I was wishing away the September, early October stuff because I'm like, man, I just want those greenheads to get here. I just want those greenheads to get here. And I missed so much of it that, it was always like, these dumb divers, or I just got a whole bunch of teal or whatever. And now I feel like I've really learned to appreciate just, watching those first blue wings kind of come in and book it before anybody else gets here, and seeing all the divers start to roll through, and you're always surprised how late green wings stick around. You shoot these beautiful gigantic stud green wings like mid to late November, and it's wild to see them come through your decoys, and it's hard to pass up shooting a green head for a green wing, but man, they're delicious and it's fun to see them, and they're just absolutely beautiful this time of year up here too. And like you said, snow geese, I don't spend a ton of time chasing them. But man, the last couple of weeks, we had some really awesome hunts for some snows up here, and especially in the fall. There's a ton of juvies. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I heard all week friends shooting anywhere from 200 to 600, God, and dang. They were only shooting, 7, 8, 10 guys a lot of times. So it wasn't like they brought out, 25 dudes and tore it up, but there's nothing like it. If you've never laid under a huge, like big push of birds, especially snow geese, it's mind blowing just to see how they fly and the sounds, and how in the world they don't just all crash into each other up there.
Yeah, I think they do sometimes.
Yeah, I got a couple of photos where they're just crashing right into each other, and it just baffles me how many of them there are, and like there's a feed every 2 miles, and a feed for those, it's like it might be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 birds. And it's like, how in the world is there just so many of these dang things? It doesn't end.
It's crazy.
Everywhere you look, the entire sky is moving. It's pretty special. And I feel like we caught it on a couple of those days where they were kind of coming through the area. And man, I just close, you're just sitting there in your layout and you're like, this is unbelievable to see this many birds. Like, I have no idea. Did you see 1 million today? I have no idea. It's like, at a certain point, you're like, more than 100,000, like a ton. I have no idea. For hours, there was just flock after cloud and waves of them. And even if they're a mile high, you can still see them, and it's fun to see.
I've tried to count, like even in the spring, watching those big migration days when that lead edge adult push is going on, and they're just, a mile high, 30,000 feet, just headed for Canada. And I've tried to count them, and it's just like the spectacle of seeing it. Even if you don't get the chance to shoot at them, just seeing that many snow geese flying over you all day long, if you got the right conditions. And I've tried to count, and I figure there's been days where I've seen over 1 million going over, and who knows, you never really know how many you're seeing, but you try to count, you go, 10, 20, okay, that's 100. Okay, that's probably 1,000, and it goes from end to end. The entire horizon goes from end to end. So if that's 1,000, that's 1,000, that's 10,000, and then it just for hours and hours. It's so cool to see. And I just want to back up and clarify one thing too about teal and all the other. I don't want to sound like a mallard purist or anything like that. I've always hated that growing up. I've definitely become a little bit more of a fan of just trying to shoot mallards if I get the chance. But I'm going to take every duck hunting opportunity I can. And I've had a few people discuss on the internet with me about me because I want to, discuss, how people are on social media, me trying to extend the season so we have more opportunities at late season mallards. Like, well, you're taking away the opportunity to shoot teal in the early season. I'm like, I want to create something where it works for everybody. And yes, we only have a 60-day framework to work with. So what is the right solution? I don't know. Move to the Dakotas probably because we get longer seasons there. You got high plains units, believe me, I've come so close to just packing up and moving to South Dakota so many times. It's not even funny, but I love where I live right now. So it's been hard, but I've tried to push for maybe getting some sort of river zone in Minnesota where the water stays open. And sometimes the argument is, hey, only so many people have access to fields along rivers where there's water open in late November. I mean, we got 10,000 lakes. You'd think there'd be some open water places where you get some birds late season more than just along the Minnesota or Mississippi rivers. But traditionally, that's probably where the majority of the birds are. So I kind of get that argument. But at the same time, it's like, if they're telling me that I'm taking away somebody's opportunity to shoot teal on September 21st when it's 150 degrees out and you got to walk through waist deep mud, then technically you're kind of taking away my opportunity to sit in an A-frame in a cut cornfield, drinking a cup of coffee or Diet Mountain Dew or whatever the case may be, and watching a swarm of 500 mallards come bombing into my decoys. Like, who's right? And yeah, there may be fewer people doing it later, but why should that opportunity really be less than? I don't know. I mean, and we had green wings. Green wings are a lot of fun too, and they are hardy little birds, so much tougher, and they're smaller than blue wings, and they're so much tougher than blue wings, and we got them here early, and then they stuck around forever, and I think I shot more green wing teal this year than I probably ever have, because that's really all we had access to. We luckily the wood ducks left and the blue wing teal left, and then the green wings showed up, and then pintails showed up for a little while. I know Dan got into pintails a little bit over here, which doesn't happen too often. But the green wings stuck around, and then they finally left when the mallards showed up, and then it was over. So it was it's
like, how do you do it? And maybe do they offer an A and B license? If you get a B, you start October and November. If you get an A, you get the first September. We kind of do that in South Dakota where the bag limits. You can either get your traditional one where they're gender specific, and then, or you can get another, like a separate license, a secondary license. The
splash bag.
And you can shoot just 3 of anything. Yeah. And once you commit to that, that's how you have it the rest of the season, which maybe something like that for dates would work out. But
what do you think of that? That splash bag's only been around for what, 2 years? Something like that?
I think so, yeah.
What do you think about that? And what do other hunters in South Dakota, have they seen positives or negatives to it that you've noticed?
I haven't yet. I don't know of anybody that I hunt with that has taken the 3 bird whatever bag limit kind of thing. I'd
be curious to know what the numbers are, if people are actually using that or not.
Yeah, I would too. And maybe, I guess I've just never felt like, canvasback or pintails. Like, I've never wanted to shoot more of them than I'm allowed, kind of a feeling, to where I'm like, I feel like with our normal bag limits, you can have plenty to choose from and plenty to, feed yourself for a while. So I don't have any complaints about that there. But I'm just like, man, if someone just shoots 3 hen pintails just because they can, I'm like, why? That part to me is a little cringe. But I've even had conversations with people that I feel like I respect their opinion, and they're like, man, you see some of these early pile pictures from guys that are hunting them in Canada, and they're all brown. So I'm not knocking on anybody, but it's like, dude, there's a pile of hen pintails in there, or hen mallards or whatever. And some folks are like, man, that makes no difference in the grand scheme of things. And when you talk about it from a 10,000 foot view,
right,
it makes no difference. Some guys are like, dude, if we put the limits to be different up there, it would totally change the game down here. I don't know, but nobody that I hunt with has had that. So I really don't know much about that.
I know we hunted Saskatchewan this year, Dan and I did, and it was mostly geese. We were trying to hunt Canada or snow geese and specks and get into cranes a little bit, but we did find one pond that had some teal and a few other ducks on it, and we hunted it, and we're like, oh, that's a pintail. Oh, that's a pintail. And same thing. It was early September, so they were all brown. But yeah, we could have shot, our 16 pintails or whatever it was up
all
there.
Hands.
All brown ones anyway. But and I think in one hand, there's so much less hunting pressure on those ducks up there that maybe, things kind of even out in the long run. But it makes you wonder a little bit about how important certain bag limits are in certain areas. And yeah, I don't want to go out there and shoot a bunch of hen pintails by any means. But and honestly, like early season mallards, they're not going to look very good, which is fine because I like eating them, but they're not fatty anyway. So like that's the other reason why I want to shoot mallards in late November is just because usually those are the ones that are fattened up. They look the best. They're the most fun to hunt, and they're going to taste the best when you put them on the table. Now, I'm not going to say teal don't taste good. We shot some fatty green wings this year too, which were pretty good. But man, the size of that mallard breast versus the size of that teal breast, getting a nice fatty mallard breast you're just getting so much better table fare than you are from anything else. So it's hard to argue against it other than opportunity for some people, I guess. But
I would agree. There's not a lot of things I think of when I think of November mallards, and I'm like, I don't like that part. I guess the only thing I can think of is Thanksgiving means that more people are home, which means more people are hunting. That's the only thing I can think of that I don't love about November. But other than that, I'm like, dude, there's nothing better.
Well, and the other thing is, and in this, one of this guys that I was discussing this with on Facebook, he was talking about, well, people don't hunt in November because they're too busy deer hunting. And I'm like, well, that's their choice, because honestly, that's my favorite time to go, because that usually opens up a lot of hunting opportunities, because it opens up a lot of cornfields if they're not deer hunting nearby it or something. But it opens up a lot of ag where you can get into fields. And that's usually when the best push of birds is, at least for our part of the state. That's usually the best time to go. So I know when I lived in North Dakota, as soon as the gun season started for deer hunting, man, we got so excited, because I lived in Fargo, and we, to go hunt when I lived in Fargo, I had at least an hour drive to get away from the city, to get away from all the pressure, to get onto fields and things like that. And when the deer hunting season would start, we would smash within about 15 minutes of town, because nobody would be out there duck hunting, and there'd be mallards and pintails and all sorts of stuff moving through, but the fields would open up because they're too busy driving around trying to chase deer around. So, man, I don't know. It's going to be hard to tell me that mid to late November hunting is the best for waterfowl.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I agree with you.
At least up here. And as a photographer, I'll tell you what, I took some pictures of mallards the other day, and it just doesn't, it's almost like spring at this point, right? Because the birds are starting to get colored up, and trying to take pictures of early season waterfowl just isn't that great. Spring is the best, but I got some really cool mallard stuff the other day, because I finally found a nice pod of them that I could take pictures of, and they just look great.
Man, it's shooting with a camera, and I know that that's become a real popular thing. Everybody these days has a camera in their blind, but man, it's hard to. It feels just like hunting, It's the same thing. You're hiding. It's not any easier. Now, some guys go to like parks or preserves or whatever, refuges, and can shoot from the window, and that's fine. But you can tell those style of photos versus someone who you're like, I know that guy was sitting in the cattails hiding. Like, there's no way that it's not a golf course. I can tell it's not a golf course,
Yeah.
But man, it's so much fun. I love taking the photos of them. I love going back to the computer and looking through hard drives or, your memory card of them, and you seeing the ones that line up cool. And there's, I think it's opened up a lot of, like in my world, in my circle of friends and stuff, it's opened up a lot of conversation for people to understand the respect that I have to these animals. People are like, how do you go from telling me that this is like such a cool bird and all the intricacies of, how they fly and when they go feed and mate and their calls and all this stuff about these birds, and then you shoot them, and it's like, man, it's not like that. It's not this like the shooting thing is just the byproduct of hunting. Like that's how I eat. So that's how I get them to the table. But the entire process leading all the way up to the last 15 yards when you call the shot, that's what I love about this sport, and the bird in particular. It's not that hard to be proficient with a shotgun. It's hard to hide. It's hard to trick them. It's hard to scout. It's hard to get permission. It's hard to learn how to blow a call. It's hard to walk hundreds of yards back into these things, at dark, bringing in decoys and all that stuff. That's the part that I love. The last bit is just the name of the game. But there's just nothing that I like more than just being around these things and learning about them. And, whether it's with a camera or with a gun, as long as they're on the other end of it, I dig it. I'm into it.
I definitely enjoy, I love shooting ducks, don't get me wrong. And I love the whole thing too, setting up, calling at them, tricking them. But I love taking pictures of them now. And I've told you this before, I'm an opportunistic guy. So to be fair, the mallards I took pictures of were in a park the other day. They were completely wild, but they're definitely accustomed to being around some people. So I was able to get kind of close. You can't get right up next to them, but you can get kind of close to them. And but I enjoy that too, because they are wild ducks, and it's nothing else. It's good practice, but you get a chance to see wildlife in a situation that you don't normally get to be that close to them, and to be able to take some of those pictures, I think is kind of fun. But Dan will tell you too that how many times have we been in like an A-frame this year, Dan? And there's, 5 or 6 of us hunting or whatever. And I've never even loaded my gun. I'm just taking pictures of whatever's coming in.
Yeah. And it doesn't make a difference to how many we shoot anyway. So might as well take pictures.
Cause I'm just missing them. Yeah. Well, and it is tough. And honestly, you have to, I don't think people realize how hard it is to be a waterfowl photographer or videographer in the wild in a hunting situation, because when you're shooting with a gun, you can completely hide everything until you pop up to shoot. And at that point, you don't have to be that stealthy anymore. But trying to get a camera out of the blind and film them or take pictures of those birds decoying, coming in, dumping, setting up, you want to get them cupped up and working in. And if you're filming them, you want to, if they wing trick at all, you're trying to capture all that. And then if you do have hunters with you too, you're trying not to get busted so that your buddies don't give you a hard time for ruining it for them that day.
Yes, that is so true. There's so many variables that you're like, well, that would be an awesome spot to hide, besides the fact that there's this gigantic thing that's in the way, or the sun is, in your eyes, or whatever. There's just so many variables that go along with it that it can get tricky, but I guess that's just part of the game that you're after and that you want to play. But
it's part of the challenge, for sure.
Yeah.
What if you, as a guy that's spent a lot of time doing it, what's your favorite waterfowl hide? If you're in some sort of blind, what's your favorite hide to shoot out of with a camera, like say a layout or an A-frame or, a pit, or what have you shot out of that you like the best?
I would say it's difficult to shoot from like the ground when you're like in a layout or even hiding under socks and stuff. The hiding under socks thing is cool because a lot of the images, especially like a wide angle shot where they're right on top of you and you get all this stuff, that's kind of a cool shot. But I like, for all aspects, if I had to pick, probably an A-frame, just because you can get low and you can take photos of the dog coming back to the decoys, which are cool. You can if you're real low in certain angles, you can get them over the decoys. With a pit, it's cool when you shoot them and they're right above you and they have no idea that you're there, but all your photos end up being pretty much mostly blue skies and some dog photos that don't necessarily do it for me. But I think anything that you can get like a little bit of sky, some foreground, so you can see the whole thing. I think that's what does it for me, because that's where you can connect and be like, I've been in cattails. I know that's what a mallard looks like dropping into some cattails. Like, that's just what does it for me. And that's what I try to represent in my photos too. Or just even like a diver, like you're not going to necessarily get them like doing this whole crazy aerobatic thing in the air all the way. I mean, they're just going to skirt right by and they're going to be at water level. And people that hunt them, they know that. So that's why I want it to look like this is what it actually looks like. And if you enjoy this sport and you participate in it, you would know that, natural to their environment and to how they actually live out there.
Yeah, there. I've been so frustrated at times when I'll get a really cool shot of a pheasant or a mallard or whatever the case may be, and it's just there's no contrast with anything. It's just blue sky behind them, or there's no background, there's no habitat. It's just this blue sky and a bird, and the birds and like I got this pheasant shot that. I don't know if I can talk about it yet or not, but it's going to be on a billboard pretty soon, and it's a really cool shot of this pheasant. And I mean, it almost flew into my face. Like I put the camera up. I think I put it on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, but I almost had to put the camera up as a defensive mode because the dogs flushed it right. I just took the dogs for a walk with the camera and they flushed it right at me. And it's one of my favorite pheasant shots. And you got, the tail is curling and, the wings are out and it's just this really cool shot. And, let's see if I can, there it is on the right there, Dan. Yep. And I've got a couple of different versions. Thankfully I had the super high speed going on the shutter. So that's one of the shots. There's probably 5 or 6 in that sequence that I really liked. And it's a great shot, but I wish I would have had some sort of contrasting background or something with it too. And I can't really complain about it, I guess, but
no, I agree.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. Some of my favorite pintail ones on a particular day, how they were working and where they were landing was just a big cutout where these 2 cattail sections ended. And there was kind of this little channel there. And so there's just not a lot behind them. So a lot of the ones I have that are just super clean and crisp, there's just a lot more blue sky than I'd want, and it's like, man, if he just would have scooted over, 5 feet to the other side, there would be tons of cool cattails and all this other stuff. But you don't control them. You're just there to enjoy the show.
Got to get what you can get and just hope for the best. I don't know how many times I've gone out on a photo mission, and you'll spend a couple hours, like some of that pheasant stuff that I did in the snow. I probably spent 2 weeks, probably every morning and afternoon, pretty much for 2 weeks straight out there. And if I went out there for 3 hours and sat and froze my butt off in the snow, if I got one shot that I was happy with, then it was all worth it. You hope for the best and you take what you can get. And, the more you go out there, the luckier you get. And I just want to go back to hunting out like A-frames for 1 second too, because this is the struggle is, and I'm curious how you do it because, a lot of times, and I do have a little camo wrap on my lens. I've got the Canon 70-200, the white one, which Corey Loeffler immediately printed off some sticky camo and wrapped it on there to try to camo it when we were turkey hunting. He looked at my lens. He's like, come on, man. The thing's going to glow in the woods. So he camoed it up for me a little bit, but you're still sticking this lens in this black body, which I don't have any camo on the body, kind of up and over it. And I'll try to kind of work it through some stubble that we've got up on the front of the A-frame and try to even kind of bend some of the stubble around the top of it to try to cover it up as much as I can. But it's tough, especially if they're working over the top of you. If if they're geese and they're going to give you another pass or something, they come over a little bit high. It's kind of like once you're up there, you don't want to move. You're kind of screwed. Like, don't look up. Don't move. But one little trick that I've had some success with is if we've got 2 A-frames next to each other, I'll sit where they join, and then I'll try to kind of poke out through the middle of those middle flaps there where they're joining. And it's a little bit of a lower angle, and it's sometimes hard to maneuver, but sometimes it's depending on our situation, it's been a little bit easier to hide the camera that way.
Yeah, that's 100% been the same experience I've had. And I tend to like those photos better where you can get more of a little bit of everything opposed to just the kind where you point them right over the top of the A-frame, because that's kind of what everybody's used to seeing is at eye level. So then you do something that's way lower and all of a sudden it's like, that's a cool vantage point, or just a little bit different look.
Have you ever done the muskrat house, the floating muskrat house deal and gone out in the water?
Man, I haven't. I've seen it and I'm like, I've screenshotted so many of them to try to find what version of that would work great.
Yeah.
I would love to see one kind of like that that's not mounted to like a tripod or any sort of device that you could still freehand it, and that had like a viewing window up top, because the muskrat style ones that I've seen, or the fake swan or that kind of stuff, it's like, that would be awesome. Maybe divers would be cool right on, skimming the water, or when they're like actually on the water. But that last like 40 yards, when they're still like doing the thing and coming in. Like, I love all that stuff so much that it requires kind of a lot of movement and a lot of it's just kind of all over the place. So it wouldn't work well for that situation. But man, if there was a way to hide and do that, holy smokes, that would be cool.
Yeah. I just go ahead, Art.
I was gonna say, I always feel like, and I'm sure in hunting too, I'm always like, crap, they can totally see me. I always like, it feels like, I feel like I'm a 7-year-old that did something wrong, and mom is just about to find out. Like, you're constantly just like, oh crap, I can't move. They're gonna bust me. I know they're gonna. And a lot of times, like, do they have no idea you're there? You spent hours grassing this thing or whatever. But
it's always the cameraman's fault. It's always the cameraman's fault.
For sure.
And I've been on both sides of that. Like I know we filmed a couple of shows where I was hosting and we had a camera guy set up in in the field behind us, and he had this big tripod and this big shoulder camera, and it was, I mean, it might as well just been parked in a pickup, behind the spread behind us. But and I don't know, it's hard to say if he didn't. We were hunting snow, so did he actually get busted, or were they just being snow geese? It's hard to tell sometimes what it is. But now that I'm usually the guy with the camera, I'm like, it's not my fault. It wasn't me.
It's the best when you kind of feel like they're starting to lean into like, well, there was one guy out of the blind, whether you're hiding in ghillie blankets or whatever, and then all of a sudden you bring your truck and trailer and 2 of them land, and you look at them like, ha,
yeah,
like, I told you it wasn't me.
I've definitely gotten yelled at a few times, and then, or you just get self-conscious, and if the first couple groups don't work right, I'm not sticking my camera out, at least until the guys get some birds on the ground and get to pull the trigger a little bit, then I'll go back to filming. But if they're not working right away, I just try to eliminate that one. It's not me. Wasn't me. Yep. Don't blame me this time.
I did my part.
Man, I could sit and talk waterfowl photography with you, I think, all day, Art, honestly. But we should probably save some for the next podcast. But let's, you got plans this winter? We're doing this Alaska trip. Do you got any trips planned? Are you going to go out and do some waterfowl stuff somewhere?
Yeah, I think we're pretty well froze up here, and then we run until Valentine's Day with our resident geese population, and that's fun. It can kind of bring the best and worst of folks. They ban a lot of birds, so you get that crowd that is all about that, and then you get all the people that, I don't know. It just seems like there's always all that stuff when there's just like a concentrated bird amount, and there's only a certain amount of places they can go, and people trying to get them everywhere. So I typically try to jet and try to get to Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas a little bit. So I'll be heading back down that way. I'm just trying to finalize a couple of little travel details and try to either, it's always like, do you fly to a location and you kind of stick to that area, or do you drive and, roll the dice on weather, and especially everything around this time of year, you never know what we've had snow in Texas some of the years I've been there. So it's kind of like, oh man, you really roll the dice and see what happens, but it's an adventure either way. And I know I'll head south too. So
I like to drive, man. I mean, flying's fine, but especially when you got hunting gear, camera gear, if I got my dogs with or whatever, driving is so much. It's, I think it's easier. It's a little bit longer, and you got to drive and all that stuff. And if you're driving to Texas, that's a good haul. But I just think it's easier if you're hauling all your stuff and keep all your stuff in your truck and things like that. And are you going to go down and see Toby then at Cadillac Creek?
Yeah. Yep. I always look forward to that trip, and you try to get down there every year, usually at the end, somewhere in December, January. And Toby and all the dudes from Cadillac have been awesome friends of us, me personally, and Alclair as well. They've just been wonderful dudes. So I always like my time down there, and I usually try to spend about a week or so with them. And I love being down there. It's a fun style of hunting. It's not what I normally do with, they run big groups and they make big piles and stuff, but it's fun to see the excitement from folks who don't get to do that often. And even up here, like if we're hunting 5 guys, like that's kind of like where I'm like, okay, that's enough dudes. We don't need a ton more. And there's some days where you get 10 guys and you beat them up and it's fun. And I'm not against it necessarily. Like I'll never do it again, but my preferred style is like, if you get 3 really good friends that work well together, that's just perfect for me. But there's something fun with, they get 15, 20 dudes that are from parts of the country where they might only kill 5-7 mallards a year, and they all of a sudden you shoot 100 birds and it's 8:30 in the morning, and they're you can just tell that they're just they've never seen anything like it. It's fun, it's exciting, and it's fun to see the dogs work and just be under big spins of birds like that. And they're a great group of guys, so I'll enjoy that.
I went down there with Corey Loeffler a couple of years ago, that Sitka Whites trip that we did down to Oklahoma and Kansas and Texas. And I didn't know Toby Brolin. And so he's like, yeah, I talked to Toby. I think we're going to get down there to Amarillo. And I was like, oh, cool. I've been to Texas a little bit, but I've never been there, and I didn't really know him. And so I was kind of, we're in the truck, and I was kind of Googling a little bit. I saw a picture of him. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, I didn't know what to expect, tattoos all over, and, didn't really look like a typical waterfowl hunter. And man, he couldn't have been a nicer guy while we were down there. Like, what just a great human being. Just couldn't have had a better time. The hunt was good. Shot some birds. I just filmed, I think, the whole time, but man, what a neat guy down there.
He really is. Yeah, it was actually crazy. So Toby and I connected on a music thing. Someone was asking about some in-ear product, and he tagged the music side of our company or something along those lines. So we started talking, and he made a joke, or I made a joke, something about like a speckled-belly goose, and we both were like, wait a second, did you just say speckled-belly? Like, because I didn't know what he looked like. I had no idea about Cadillac Creek. I didn't know anything about him. We were just the dude on the internet that I was talking about in-ears with. And we both were like, holy cow, like, it's crazy. We both love music. We both traveled and played, and he plays guitar as well. And obviously the hunting conversation came up, and we both obviously connected real well on that. And he said, man, you need to come down here. And I had just had my son, I can't remember if he was just about to be born or he was born, but we made the trip happen. And like you said, I had no idea what to expect, especially with guides in general. This is no shade at anybody in particular, but they're an interesting group of dudes. And the same thing, you get the tattoos and the mustache and just the way that they run their hunts. He's been nothing but a great friend to me, and we spend a ton of time talking, even not about waterfowl hunting and throughout the rest of the year. But all of them were extremely cool and welcomed me with wide open arms. And ever since that first trip, I knew, I was like, man, I really want to make this a thing where I get to come down here and spend some time with these guys. And it's been an awesome friendship, an awesome relationship, and they just crush them. They're good dudes.
And I was impressed too. I wasn't expecting, we stopped at Falco too. And with the guys there, I think it was JD there, and then Toby at Cadillac Creek prayed before the hunt. And I hadn't really seen that before. And I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah.
I think I've really appreciated that about Toby. He doesn't necessarily put on the front of like, he's one way in person or on the internet and one way in real life, which I've ran into those guys plenty, when they act a certain way online and you see him and you're like, man, that's not the same dude on Instagram as it is in real life. And that's not him. He's the real deal. I think he practices what he's preaching. He believes he's not the fake kind that won't say bad words and make the jokes and, do the thing. But at the end of it, you can totally tell anybody that actually knows him, will say like, dude, that dude he's the real deal, and he's super kind and all the things. He's a great person. And yeah, it's cool how they run their hunts. I thought that was really neat that they did that. And can't say enough good things about all those guys down there.
Yeah, it was a fun time. All right, Art. Well, if people want to know more about Alclair or see your photography, tell us where we should go on the internets.
Yeah, so my name is Art Diaz. So Art Diaz Photos is my Instagram handle, where I post pretty much most of my hunting photography stuff there. As far as work goes, Alclair Outdoors is all of our social handles, so Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. And then alclair.com will get you right where you need. We're super active on social, so we're always posting about sales or what we got going on, where we'll be, at events and trade shows and things like that. But please, if we're in your area, come through. A big part of what we do is I love taking care of folks, being intentional with spending time with them, communicating. Like, I am for sure thrive on interaction with folks and people. So if I'm in your area, if you're an outfitter and you see me photographing another place, or I'm on a work trip or whatever, please reach out. I love making new friends and going on adventures. So yeah, I look forward to crossing paths with you guys on the road. And if you need anything, please feel free to shoot us a DM, my personal page or my work page for whichever reason. And would love to chat and hang out.
Well, I'm happy to be working with you guys. I'm looking forward to using all the products that we'll be using. We've been using some already for a while, and you'll be seeing some of the videos from Kodiak, Alaska as well, too. And we still need to get together and do some hunting this year. So after we get back from Alaska, we may have to chase some pheasants around if we get some time, but or maybe we'll just have to make a trip somewhere.
Yes, I would agree. We were on so close with Thanksgiving, and my daughter turned 1 a couple days after, so it was just a busy last couple days. But I would love to get up there and, yeah, like you said, even just hunt pheasants. I would absolutely love that. We'd love to make that happen.
Let's do it. All right, man. Art Diaz, thanks for the time today on the show.
Dude, thank you so much, man.
Looking for winter adventure? Might as well pick a place with over 1,000 lakes. Ottertail County, Minnesota is in the middle of everywhere, offers a simpler pace, and has something for everyone. Find your inner otter at ottertaillakescountry.com.
Live Target, the leader in Match the Hatch, is back with new lures that also match the action. Introducing the Live Craw. The Live Craw is irresistible to bass, walleye, and other freshwater species. FTech's winner, the Ultimate Frog, looks and acts just like a swimming frog. With an exposed ultra-point mustad hook and replaceable legs, the Ultimate Frog has 2 styles, 2 sizes, and 8 colors. And iCast and FTech's winner, the Live Shrimp, mimics a fleeing shrimp for saltwater anglers. Coming soon from Live Target. It's ice fishing season and time to plan your trip to Riverbend Resort on Lake of the Woods. Stay at the Lakeside Resort along the Rainy River in one of their new cabins and enjoy delicious meals and hot or cold beverages in the Miles Lab Bar and Grill. Or stay in one of their comfortable sleeper houses on the ice, complete with a TV, stove, and lots of walleyes right beneath your feet. You also have the option of staying at their motel, the Walleye Inn, located in Bret. Book your ice fishing trip to famous Lake of the Woods today at riverbendresort.com. That's riverbendresort.com. All right, this is Sporting Journal Radio. Thanks for tuning in on this station right here, by downloading the podcast, by subscribing to the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts, by listening on demand at sportingjournalradio.com, or maybe you're watching this on YouTube. Thank you very much. Make sure you like it and share it, and subscribe to our channel. Share this report with all your friends, because we're going to let you know what's going on up at Lake of the Woods right now with Joe Henry from Lake of the Woods Tourism. Joe, how you doing?
Good, Bret. I find myself, if I'm driving any distance, a lot of times I'll just jump on the web and search out Sporting Journal Radio podcast, and it's always interesting. I'll tell you that much. I love it.
Yeah, we try to make it fun for you. And these reports are some of our most popular ones, too. People are always curious on what's going on up at Lake of the Woods, what they're catching fish on, how the fish are biting, what ice conditions are like. And I want to get into ice conditions here in just one second, but we should hit the headline that's going on right now, in that there was, we've been hearing about some rumors about this. Now it's finally in the news that there's been a sale of some resorts up there along the Rainy River, Joe.
Yeah, there certainly has been, and this has actually been, it happened a while ago, so, maybe for some it's new news, but it's been actually there for a while. So, a couple of investors, a couple of business owners purchased 3 resorts and leased another one up at Lake of the Woods. So the purchase of 3 resorts was with Sportsman's Lodge in the South End on the Rainy River, actually, Borderview Lodge, and Wheeler's Point Resort. And then they're leasing a 4th resort right now, Rainy River Resort. And so it's interesting how the world works. I've met one of the owners, one of the 2 owners, and they also own Bluefin Bay up on the North Shore, which a lot of people know of, a very nice resort. And the owner I deal with has been very good to work with. They have a management team running it, and the company that runs it, Leisure Hotels, they, I met a few people so far. They've all been very nice, very down to earth people. They're all from Minnesota. One of them lives in Minnesota, is from Wisconsin originally, but yeah, just down to earth people, very nice people. And I kind of shake my head. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of people that right away want to go to the negative. Oh, big corporations come into Lake of the Woods. Oh, things are going to change for the worse. Oh, they're going to turn everything into condos. There won't be any resorts left. I've heard it all. And, I have to tell you that, there's pros and cons to everything you do in life. There can actually be some very nice positive to this as well. The positives would be, number one, the people that are running this, the first thing they do is they come in and they speak with the employees and they find out, hey, what do you do? What would you like to do? Do you want opportunity down the road? They try to put people in the right spots, and they're not getting new people to come in. There aren't new employees to get to come in. They're working with existing employees. I think in some cases things have gotten better for some, and I just think it can be a good positive. The other thing that's nice is that in a market where, let's say you have a special event, you need extra help. It's hard to get those extra employees when all they can shift employees from one resort to the other to help fill voids like that. If there's ever equipment that breaks down, they can slide equipment or resources from one resort to the other one, and it can actually be a big positive in many, many ways. So I'm excited for the future, and I also I'm happy for the people that sold their resorts that were looking to sell. I mean, hopefully it's going to be a win-win down the road.
You were talking about it being very Minnesotan, and that was a very Minnesotan way to explain it, with the appropriate usage of the word "ope" multiple times in that "ope." Oh, that was pretty good. I saw that.
I'm doing it.
See, then you're doing it right. And Jeff Anderson is going to be kind of running everything, it sounds like.
Yeah, so Jiggy, his nickname is Jiggy in the fishing industry, but he's been around the fishing industry for years and years. And Jeff's really good guy, very accomplished. A lot of people know him. He's been a guide for a long time. He worked with Alclair Outdoors. He's done a lot of things. Very accomplished guy. But so he moved his family up to the Warroad area, and he has some kids that play hockey, and a daughter is a figure skater. They moved up there recently, so it was very opportune. He had relationships with this group of people for many, many years based on where he worked before. And they always thought a lot of him, like a lot of us do. And so Jeff is going to be the general manager. And, I think he'll bring a lot to the party. And, again, it's going to be fun to see how things transpire.
Well, I know people are anxious to do some ice fishing. There's been a little bit of ice fishing going on around the region. We had a little bit of a warm up, but from the sounds of it, a lot of ice stayed pretty good. We built pretty good ice early. Obviously, it's still early in a lot of areas, so be very careful. I'm not telling you to go out there to do any ice fishing, but some areas, ice is building well. How is it going up at Lake of the Woods?
Well, it's going great, and we are building ice. Now, does that mean that we're open for ice fishing yet? You know what? No, we're not. There is some spearing and some tip-up fishing going on in Bostic Bay. I know they're checking ice all over the place. The ice guides and outfitters and such are out there working hard, and it's not ready yet, but they will let you know when it's ready. Now, there have been a few resorts, and I always got to preface this, Bret, because when I say there's been a few resorts making predictions on when they think they'll get on the ice. Number one, that's really dependent upon Mother Nature and what the ice conditions are on that part of Lake of the Woods. You could have one resort that has a road set up that's staked and marked, and it's really good for, let's say, ATV use, or maybe they have their day houses out there. But then you go a little ways down the shoreline, and it's not safe at all. You really have to work through a resort or outfitter and their trail, and they'll tell you when you can go out and how you can go out. It starts out with ATVs and snowmobiles, and then it goes to side-by-sides, and then they eventually let lighter pickups and maybe SUVs go out and that sort of thing. Early in the year, when they put day houses out, in many cases, the resorts will transport you out in light ice transportation, they call it, to the fish houses for safety reasons. So anyway, I say that to be careful, stay on the marked trails when the time comes, but we are making progress. They're marking stuff. In some cases, I see 3 to 7 inches of ice. In other cases, on the lake, it's just too early yet. Things are building, and some of the predictions, right around December 10th, give or take, which is about the norm. A lot of the resorts believe, based on the weather forecasts, that they'll be able to get their day houses out and start fishing. Time will tell.
It's interesting how ice on one lake can be completely different than ice on a different lake. Obviously, there's a number of factors that come into play, but when you think about, and I'm not going to sit here and talk about the rescue that took place on another lake recently that seems to happen on that lake on numerous occasions. It seems like something like that happens just about every year, that you don't hear about things like that happen on other bodies of water.
Well, that's correct. And I think you said it right. There's a lot of things that affect ice conditions, and it's everything from how far north you are to do you have current in the lake, how deep is the lake, is there waterfall that keeps holes open on the lake? Even on Lake of the Woods, like I said earlier, you can be fishing or going out in one area and the ice is just fine, and you go down the shoreline and there might be maybe the ice blew in sheets and it broke stuff open. So then you had 4 or 5 inches of ice and then nothing, open water. So when that freezes, you have to take the thinnest piece of ice and consider that when you're transporting somebody. And so it's just very, very different. But Bret, to your point, ice freezes very differently. Every lake, every system's different. Heck, there's ice on the Rainy River right now too. That's iced over. And I know some locals that were just going right next to their shoreline and doing a little fishing. Now, would we want the public to go and do that? Heck no. Heck, not only do you have early ice conditions, you also have current. So you just really have to be careful.
Yeah. Getting up there, and obviously I'm 6 hours away, so I don't know the lake as well as the locals do, but I just like being able to go out and have somebody that lives there and is on that ice every day be the guy that takes me out and tells me where to go. It just makes my life a little bit easier.
Well, and I should say, too, you think about what do they do? Well, so right now, as we speak, they're out there with, a lot of them have chainsaws. And on the chainsaws, they got different inches marked on the bars to make it quick. So they can stick that baby in, go right down, and boom. As soon as that water starts spraying, that's all, that's where that's how thick that ice is. How do you like my sound effects?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah. I beat Danny to the punch.
Yeah.
I knew he was going to rip a chainsaw in there pretty quick. But, I'm still waiting for it, Danny.
We're just gonna save that audio of you making that noise for a chainsaw sound effect. From
here we go. After me hearing that all winter,
baited you into that one.
But they use chainsaws and they use chisels, and you saw one of the resorts using an airboat for safety as they go out and check the ice conditions, and they have light ice rigs and they're wearing flotation suits. They use ice picks around their neck. They're working in pairs. And then a lot of times what they'll do is when they get out to a certain area, they mark where the thickest ice is to getting out. They might have to go around ice upheavals and things, or rough ice. And then they also will flood it. So they'll drill a hole and they'll actually take a pump and pump water on top of the ice. The reason being is that water on top of the ice is exposed to the cold air and it'll freeze quicker. So there's a lot of different tips and tricks they use to get that ice road built up. The other thing is, too, stay on the ice trail. A lot of times they'll build that ice road up, and that ice road will be thicker ice than is adjacent to it. So when you're traveling, stay on the marked trail.
All right, Joe. Well, it's about time to get up there and do some fishing. I'm anxious to get up there myself, and if people want to get a trip booked, where can they find more information?
You know what? Everything's on our website, and that is lakeofthewoodsmn.com.
We should mention, before we go, they could probably also come talk to you at the St. Paul Ice Show.
Gonna have a booth there Friday, Saturday, over the weekend of the ice show, and love to speak with people. Hey, we're talking Lake of the Woods ice fishing. It's really a fun time of the year. All
right, Joe. Have fun at the ice show, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Sporting Journal Radio is a division of Macaba LLC. If you've got a question, comment, or story idea for us, send us an email. Go to sportingjournalradio.com. While you're there, you can learn how to advertise on the show and visit our store for hats, hoodies, coffee mugs, and more. Go to sportingjournalradio.com.